Have you ever wondered what would happen if the sand beneath your feet came to life and transformed into your worst nightmare? Imagine a paradise beach that hides a secret so dark that even the bravest adventurer would tremble in fear. Welcome to today's episode of Midnight Mysteries, where we will dive into a story that will make you think twice before stepping onto a sand dune again. I'm Raven Shadowmere, and today I'm going to share with you a terrifying tale that began in the 1950s in a small coastal community in Oregon. A story involving mysterious disappearances, inexplicable symbols, and an ancient curse that resonates through time. But before we begin, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. After all, you won't want to miss any of our dives into the murky waters of the unknown, right? And for those of you who are already part of our mystery-loving community, how about showing your support by leaving a like? Who knows? Maybe the entities from beyond will favor us with more spine-chilling stories. Now, prepare to meet Greg Harris, an anthropology student whose curiosity led him to unearth secrets that perhaps should have remained buried in the sands of time. A journey that started with a simple academic research project and ended, well, you'll find out soon enough. And here's a warning. There's a great secret hidden between the lines of this story. Something so shocking that it could completely change your perception of the forces that govern our world. Will you be able to unravel this mystery before the end? So, dear listeners, take a deep breath, for we are about to plunge into the turbulent waters of the mystery of the killing dunes. And remember, on this beach, the tide isn't the only thing that rises at night. The wind howled through the dunes as I, Greg Harris, walked along the deserted beach of Sandstone Cove, Oregon. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of blood red, a harbinger of what was to come. I had arrived in this small coastal town just 2 weeks ago, but I already felt the weight of decades of secrets and fear looming over me. As an anthropology student, I came to research local legends. Little did I know that I was about to become part of one. It all began when I found an old newspaper clipping in the local library. Body found in the dunes. Mystery intrigues authorities. The yellowed headline read. The photo showed a middle-aged man, a fisherman by the looks of it, with a frozen expression of terror on his face. But what caught my attention the most was the strange symbol engraved on his chest, a swirling spiral that seemed to pulse even in the black and white photo. Intrigued, I began to dig deeper. Soon I discovered that this was not an isolated case. Since the 1950s, bodies had been found in the dunes, always bearing the same macabre symbol. The victims were diverse: fishermen, campers, even some locals. The only commonality? They all disappeared during the night. I decided to seek out the local sheriff, Lisa Thompson, a middle-aged woman with eyes that seemed to have seen too much. When I mentioned the cases, I noticed a tremor in her hands. "Listen, kid," she said, her voice a hushed whisper. "There are things in this town that are better left buried. If you know what's good for you, pack your things and leave while you still can." But I couldn't. The mystery consumed me. I spent days in the police archives, connecting the dots. It was then that I noticed a pattern in the disappearances. They seemed to follow the phases of the moon. My next stop was the local Native American reservation. There, I met Charlie Davis, an elder with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of 1,000 years. When I mentioned the symbol, he paled. "It's the mark of Anningan," he murmured, "the spirit of the moon that devours souls." Charlie told me an ancient legend. Centuries ago, his tribe had imprisoned a malevolent spirit in the dunes, using a powerful spell. But the spell was weakening, and the spirit was awakening, hungry for human souls. I laughed nervously. Legends were one thing, but this was madness. Right. That night, I returned to the beach. The full moon hung in the sky like a vigilant eye. The dunes seemed to shift in the darkness, shadows dancing where they shouldn't exist. Suddenly, I heard a scream. I ran toward the sound, my heart pounding in my chest. That's when I saw it. A figure being dragged into the dunes by something. I tried to reach them, but it was too late. The sand closed over them, as if they had never been disturbed. I ran back to town, my mind struggling to process what I had witnessed. I found Lisa at the station, her eyes wide with fear, when I told her what I saw. "You shouldn't have gotten involved," she whispered. "Now, he knows who you are." In the days that followed, I began noticing things. Shadows in the corners of my eyes, whispers in the wind, and at night, the sound of sand shifting beneath my window. Desperate for answers, I returned to Charlie. The elder looked at me with pity. "There's only one way to stop this," he said. "The spell must be renewed. But the price is high." He explained the ritual. It was dangerous, requiring a sacrifice, not of life, but of something equally precious: memories. Whoever performed the ritual would forget everything about their past life. I hesitated. Forget everything? My family, my friends, my dreams. But then I thought of the victims, the shattered families. I thought of the terror that had haunted this town for decades. The decision was made. The following night, under the full moon, Charlie guided me through the dunes. The wind howled, the sand moving beneath our feet as if it were alive. We reached a circle of ancient stones, nearly buried in the sand. Charlie began to chant in a language I didn't recognize. The air grew heavy, electricity crackling around us. The dunes began to shift, contorting as if in agony. And then, I saw him. A figure made of shadows and sand, his eyes glowing with an ancient and terrible hunger. Anningan, the spirit of the moon. He advanced toward me, his sandy claws outstretched, but I did not back down. I began to recite the words Charlie had taught me, feeling each syllable drain a little more of me. The creature screamed, a sound that made reality itself tremble. The sand rose around us in a furious tornado. I felt my mind fragment, memories slipping away, like water through my fingers. And then, silence. I woke up on the beach, the sun rising on the horizon. I didn't know who I was or where I had come from, but somehow, I knew that something important had been done. Lisa and Charlie found me there. They told me about the curse, about my sacrifice, about how I had saved the town. Now, years later, I still live in Sandstone Cove. Sometimes, when I walk along the beach at night, I feel a chill, as if something is watching me from the dunes. But the terror that once haunted this town is gone. I gave up my memories to save others from losing theirs. And even though I don't remember who I was, I know who I am now. The guardian of the dunes, the protector against what lurks in the shadows of the night. And as long as I am here, Anningan will remain asleep, waiting for the day the spell may weaken again. But that is a story for another day. As I delved deeper into the mystery of the killing dunes, I discovered a disturbing detail that had gone unnoticed for decades. In the dusty archives of the local library, I found a journal belonging to one of the first settlers of Sandstone Cove. Dated 1853, the settler, a certain Thomas Blackwood, described strange rituals performed by the natives in the dunes during full moon nights. He wrote about eerie chants and figures dancing in the sand, their shadows stretching in the moonlight as if coming to life. But what truly chilled my blood was a crude sketch in the corner of a page. The same spiral symbol that I had seen on the bodies of recent victims. I decided to confront Charlie Davis with this new information. The elder looked visibly shaken, his hands trembling as he lit his pipe. "There are secrets," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "that even our people dare not speak aloud." Charlie then told me about a dark faction within his tribe, guardians of ancestral knowledge that dated back to ancient times. These guardians, he explained, were responsible for keeping Anningan imprisoned in the dunes. But the price of this imprisonment, Charlie said, his eyes reflecting an ancient fear, is far too high. It was then that I understood the terrible truth. The disappearances, the deaths, were not the work of Anningan breaking free from his prison. They were sacrifices, human sacrifices to keep the spirit of the moon asleep. Horrified by this revelation, I confronted Sheriff Lisa Thompson. Her reaction surprised me. "You think we didn't know?" she said, tears of frustration in her eyes. "Why do you think we could never solve these cases? Sometimes the price of safety for many is the sacrifice of a few." The moral weight of this situation was overwhelming. The entire town was, consciously or unconsciously, complicit in a terrible pact with forces beyond our understanding. But worse was yet to come. Upon returning to my room that night, I found an anonymous note under my door. "The full moon is approaching. The sacrifice must be made. You know too much." I then realized that I was no longer just an observer in this sinister plot. I had become a central piece in the macabre game between the guardians, the police, and the ancestral spirit imprisoned in the dunes. The full moon was only 3 days away. I had to act quickly, but what could I do against such ancient and powerful forces? It was in that moment of despair that I had an epiphany. What if, instead of fighting against Anningan, or allowing the cycle of sacrifices to continue, there was a third option? I spent the next few days and nights studying furiously the ancient texts of the tribe, searching for an alternative. And it was in the early hours of the morning on the day of the full moon that I found something, a binding ritual. The ritual would allow one person to become a living vessel for Anningan, containing his power without the need for ongoing sacrifices. But there was a terrible price. Whoever performed the ritual would lose all their memories, their identity, effectively becoming a new being. The decision before me was agonizing. Allow the sacrifices to continue? Try to free Anningan and risk catastrophic consequences? Or sacrifice everything I was to save the town and break the cycle of death? As the sun set and the full moon began to rise on the horizon, I made my choice. With a heavy heart but determined, I headed to the dunes to perform the ritual that would forever change the fate of Sandstone Cove and my own. The cold sand beneath my feet seemed to pulse with ancient energy as I walked toward the stone circle. The full moon hung in the sky, a silver eye watching. The wind howled around me, carrying whispers of long-forgotten times. Charlie and Lisa were waiting for me in the circle, their faces a mix of fear and determination. They knew what I was about to do, and although they didn't fully approve, they understood it was the only way to end the cycle of violence. "Are you sure about this, kid?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, unable to find the words. Charlie began to chant the ancient incantation, his voice blending with the howling wind. As the ritual began, I felt Anningan's presence approaching. The sand around us started to shift, forming a whirlwind that engulfed us. Through the sandstorm, I saw a figure materializing, a creature made of shadows and moonlight, its eyes glowing with ancient hunger. I started to recite the words of the binding ritual, each syllable burning in my mouth like liquid fire. The creature, Anningan, roared, a sound that made reality itself tremble. I felt my mind fragment, memories slipping away like water through my fingers. My childhood, my family, my dreams and aspirations, all fading before my eyes. The pain was unbearable, but I clung to the one thought that remained. This would save the town. This would end the sacrifices. With one last scream of agony, mine or Anningan's, I couldn't tell, there was an explosion of light. The sandstorm abruptly ceased, and I collapsed to my knees, exhausted. When I opened my eyes, the world seemed different, more vivid, more vibrant. I could feel the pulse of the earth beneath my feet, the whisper of the waves on the beach. But when I tried to remember my name, my story, I found only emptiness. Lisa and Charlie looked at me with a mixture of admiration and pity. "It worked," Charlie murmured, his voice barely a whisper. In the days, weeks, and months that followed, I learned to live with my new self. I had no memories of the past, but I had a clear purpose: to protect Sandstone Cove and keep Anningan contained. The town slowly began to heal. The disappearances ceased, and a feeling of peace started to spread. People still looked at me with a mix of gratitude and fear, but I didn't mind. Deep down, I knew I had done the right thing. Sometimes, on full moon nights, I feel Anningan stirring within me. In these moments, I walk to the dunes and let the sand slip between my fingers, reminding both myself and the entity within me of the pact we made. I may have lost who I was, but I gained a greater purpose. And as long as I live, the dunes of Sandstone Cove will remain a place of beauty and mystery, not terror. The tale of the mystery of the killing dunes and the sacrifice of Greg Harris, now simply known as the Guardian, has become a legend whispered throughout Sandstone Cove. A story of courage, sacrifice, and the eternal struggle between good and evil. Sheriff Lisa Thompson could finally breathe a sigh of relief. She dedicated the rest of her career to telling the truth to the families of the victims, offering them the long-awaited closure they deserved. The burden of decades of secrets was finally lifted from her shoulders. Charlie Davis took on the role of guardian of the story, ensuring that future generations would never forget the sacrifice made to protect the town. He became a mentor to the Guardian, helping him navigate his new existence and understand his unique role. As for the Guardian, he became an almost mythical figure in the town. Ever watchful, he walked the beaches at night, his eyes glowing with knowledge beyond human comprehension. People learned to respect his presence, understanding that he was both protector and a constant reminder of the hidden secrets of the world. The dunes, once a site of terror, transformed into a sanctuary, a place where the mundane and the supernatural intertwined, safeguarded by the sacrifice of a man who chose to forget himself to save others. Dear viewers of Midnight Mysteries, the story of the Guardian of Sandstone Cove reminds us that there are forces in this world that transcend our understanding, ancient, powerful, and often dangerous forces. But it also shows us the power of sacrifice and human courage. One man chose to give up everything, his identity, his memories, his very being, to protect a community. It is a powerful reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism are those that no one will ever fully know. Reflect, dear listeners. What would you be willing to sacrifice for the greater good? What dark secrets might be hidden within the stories of your own towns, waiting to be uncovered? And the next time you walk along a deserted beach under the moonlight, remember, that solitary figure you see in the distance, walking among the dunes, may be more than he seems. He could be a guardian, a protector against forces we cannot fully comprehend. Sleep well, if you can. And always remember, sometimes the true horror lies not in what we can see, but in the silent sacrifices made to keep us safe. And so, dear nighttime viewers, we come to the end of another chilling episode of Midnight Mysteries. If this story of killing dunes and ancestral spirits sent shivers down your spine, know that there's much more where that came from. But before we part ways, I have a special request to make. If you enjoyed this dive into the depths of coastal terror, why not show your support by leaving a like on this video? Each like is like a beacon in the darkness, guiding more curious souls to our lair of mysteries. And speaking of curious souls, if you're not yet part of our community of macabre lovers, what are you waiting for? Click that subscribe button and activate the notification bell. That way, you'll be the first to know when new terrors emerge from the shadows to haunt your nights. Remember, each subscription not only feeds this humble nightmare narrator, but also helps us unearth even more dark stories from the shadowy corners of this world. And who knows, perhaps your next sleepless night will be courtesy of us. Oh, and for those braver among you, how about sharing this video with your friends? After all, fear is always more delicious when shared, isn't it? Who knows? You might be the one to introduce someone to the mysteries lurking in the shadows of the everyday. Before we go, I want to thank each of you for having the courage to face the unknown alongside us. You are true explorers of the occult, brave enough to confront the terrors that most prefer to ignore. And for that, my dear friends, you have my sincere admiration. And for those wondering what's next on our channel, well, let's just say not all doors should be opened, and not all secrets should be revealed. But if you are brave enough to turn the knob for the next episode, I promise that what you find on the other side will test the limits of your sanity. Until then, stay vigilant in the shadows, distrust the whispers in the dark, and remember, sometimes the true terror lies not in what we can see, but in what is hidden right before our eyes. I am Raven Shadowmere, and this has been Midnight Mysteries. Good night. If you can manage to sleep after this story,